and welcome to College of Lore.
I'm Jill.
And I'm Kate. Thank you so much for joining us for a chat about role-playing games.
I'm excited.
Yay, me too. Today we're going to teach you how to create a character in the End of the World role-playing game. And in the process, we're going to introduce you to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And the reason that that will work is that in this role-playing game, the character that you create is yourself. So there's no need to come up with a detailed background for your character. Mm-hmm. You already know it. It's your past.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing that you need to do when you're creating an end-of-the-world character is you need to determine your starting characteristics. So you have 3 types of characteristics: physical, mental, and social characteristics. And then within each of those categories, you have 2 specific characteristics, one offensive and one defensive. Right. So for physical, your offensive characteristic is dexterity and your defensive characteristic is vitality. Mm-hmm. For mental, we have logic and willpower, and social is charisma and empathy.
I feel that like my willpower should be in the negatives.
Maybe. That's not a possibility though, so lucky for you. So at the start, you have at least 1 in everything. You can't have less than 1.
Okay.
5 is the maximum that you can have, and when you are going to set your characteristics at the beginning of the game, you have 10 points that you can distribute among your characteristics. So we can go ahead and do that.
Okay. We did it!
Yay! All right, so once you've distributed those 10 points, the next thing that happens is called voting. Normally, what happens at this point is one person at a time, you will tell the rest of the table what numbers you chose for your physical, mental, and social characteristics, and then everybody else gets to decide whether you were accurate in your assessment or not. So the way that this works is everybody has a positive and a negative die. This is going to be something that you use a lot in the game. It's the main mechanic of the game.
The positive and negative die, they're all D6s, and that they're 2 different colors. So like one color of the die would mean it's the negative die, and then the other color would mean that that's the positive die.
That's right. So it can be any 2 colors that you want. They just have to be easily distinguishable from each other. And then secretly / anonymously, everybody puts 1 or both of their dice into the bag.
Yes.
If you think that the person accurately represented themselves in the numbers that they wrote down, you put both dice in. That's sort of net neutral. They don't need to increase or decrease their skill. If you think that person shortchanged themselves, then you can put in a positive die only, indicating that you would like for them to bump up their skill. Or you can put in a negative die only, indicating that you think they should decrease their skill. So what you end up with is a bag full of dice. You shake them all up, dump them out, and count how many positive and negative dice there are.
Right.
If there's more positive dice, the person gets to bump up one of those 2 skills. And if there's more negative dice in the bag, you have to decrease one of those 2 skills. If it's the same, if there's just the same number of positive and negative dice, you don't have to do anything. You got it right.
Yeah.
And everybody agrees with you,
Yeah.
so you don't have to adjust it at all.
Right.
And then another important thing is when you do that, if you increase or decrease a skill, you should keep track of that for later because it's going to impact your features, which we're going to get into next.
Okay.
So I think we're going to insert a clip here from the End of the World stream that we did recently, where we did this voting mechanic with a bunch of friends in an actual game. Yeah. And then Jill and I will sort of fudge a version of it for the purposes of this video to finish our characters.
Right.
So Jill, what did you put for your physical stats?
2 and 2.
2 and 2. Okay,
Yep.
So maybe Elise, you can start. And so everybody hide the dice.
I just went look.
Yeah.
Okay, that works.
It's a lot easier for her to hide her eyes than it is for us to hide our face.
And plus, like, you know, the stream could maybe see what you guys are doing.
That's
but,
true.
like, I will not.
Yeah. All right. So everybody done?
Yeah.
Okay, so Jill.
Can I look?
Yeah, and somebody maybe just like shake that around a bit, dump those dice out.
Time. And look, it's my instinct.
So how many positive and negative dice?
Oh, it's even.
Even.
Okay,
Hey.
so what that means is it stays like
I've,
that.
I've done a good job of assessing
Jill's
my
on
own
the money.
skills.
Awesome.
All right.
All right, so yeah, let's start with Jill. What did you put for your physical characteristics?
Well, I would have put both ones, but we've started going to the gym recently, so I gave myself both 2. So a 2 for my dexterity, a 2 in vitality.
Okay, great. So this is when we would vote secretly,
Yep.
Slightly awkwardly. I just have to tell you
Yeah.
whether I think you should increase that or decrease it, and I think that you should increase one of those 2 stats.
Oh my gosh. Fine. So I'm going to make my dex a 3 and put a little +1 next to that to show that I've
That
increased
you
it.
increased it. And I think that this makes sense because often we think of your offensive physical skill as pure strength.
Right.
But in this game, like pure physical strength and dexterity are mixed together into that one skill. So what do you have for mental?
For my mental ability, I gave myself a 1 for willpower because I feel like I succumb to the sort of attraction of buying things or eating a lot of chocolate or whatever. Just I'm very low in the willpower area. But for my logic, I gave myself a 3 because I think I'm very logical sometimes. However, I can be scatterbrained and I can be distracted.
Just like that.
Negative 1.
No, I think that's accurate. I think that's really accurate. That was very well reasoned. And all the things you said, seem to be accurate to me.
So for my social, I gave myself a 4 in charisma and a 4 in empathy. I'm very emotional. Like if I hear something happy, I'll tear up or, straight up cry. If it's, a little bit sad, I will cry. So I'm very empathetic. For charisma, I do make friends fairly easily, and I do think that, empathy and charisma are kind of my strengths.
For sure.
Yeah.
I agree. So much so that I am saying that you should increase that.
Oh my god, the empathy for sure. I'm gonna be crying the whole game.
So that's it for you.
Yeah, so let's do
Awesome.
yours.
Okay, so for me, for physical, I gave myself a 2 dexterity and a 2 vitality. I don't think I'm a super wimp, but I'm also not super strong. We're only just starting going to the gym.
Yeah, by
But we'll
the
get
end,
there.
we're gonna
Yeah.
have like 5s
For sure.
in dexterity especially,
Yeah.
so we're working our way up. But I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. So for mental, I have put myself at logic 4, willpower 2.
I think that's a bit low, to be honest.
you?
Because, well, first of all, you have a doctorate,
I do.
which is pretty awesome. But also, frequently will sort of resist purchasing things or resist eating certain things. So I think either one of those could go up 1.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, I think I will bring up my willpower.
Okay.
Just because it's at a 2. So I think I'll bring that up to 3. And because I don't think I'm max logic. It's been a few years since I finished school.
She's very smart and very logical, you guys.
Oh,
I
thanks.
could have easily seen her go up to a 5.
So for social, I gave myself a 3 in charisma and a 3 in empathy as well.
Okay, well, I might be a bit biased, but I think you're pretty charismatic. Like, I find that you, actually, Kate is our team lead at work.
True.
And I think she has a really good way with people and a really, she's very good at connecting with people, which could also bleed into empathy. So I would say you should up that.
Okay. Well, let's go one more charisma then.
I feel bad that we didn't negative something.
Well, it makes sense.
Yeah.
We're friends.
We are friends.
We believe in
like
each
each other way too much. Maybe for the sake of this, I might put a negative on my logic.
All right, so now we have our characteristics figured out. We're the first part is done.
We did it.
So the next thing that we're going to figure out is our features.
Right.
So knowing what your characteristics are is part of your personality, but the features is the part of your character sheet where you can really start to flesh out your character and when you're really going to start to get to know the person. So features are just sort of stable characteristics that you have that are related to each of the 3 different characteristics.
Right.
So we have physical features, mental features, and social features. The base you have is one positive and one negative feature in each of the 3 characteristics. However, if you had to modify your characteristic during the voting, that changes the features that you have.
Right.
If you had to bump up one of your characteristics, that means that instead of just a positive and a negative feature, you will either add another negative feature, or you can remove the positive feature, meaning you'd be left with just one negative feature. So personally, both of those 2 things are valid in the rules. Personally, I like adding more features because that adds more opportunity for role playing. So what you're going to use these features for is during the game, if you're trying to do something and some of your features might apply to what you're trying to do, that will modify the dice pool that you're building and change your chance of success. So I think it's more fun to have more features rather than fewer. But if you really can't think of 2 negative physical features about yourself, I mean, it's difficult, then you can go ahead and just have that 1 negative instead of a positive and 2 negatives.
Right.
And so the flip side of this is if you had to decrease one of your characteristics due to voting, you will, instead of just 1 positive and 1 negative feature, you'll have 2 positives and 1 negative, or just 1 positive feature. Right. So you either add a positive feature or take away a negative feature.
Right.
Okay.
And one thing I really like about the features that I found when we were playing is that they were very subjective as well. So it's kind of like if you said you had a negative feature, but in some cases it could be considered a positive feature, it might actually work to your benefit depending on your GM.
For sure. Okay, so let's go ahead and write down our features and then we'll come back.
All right, so we just figured out our features. And I had a +1 in physical, so that means I have 2 negatives and 1 positive. Okay, so my physical features are 1, negative, bad knees. My second negative is that I hate cardio and I will avoid it, which could be tricky if we have to run from anything.
For sure.
However, I do have high endurance for like walking at a steady pace or keeping at an activity.
And that's a positive.
And that's a positive, yep. My mental features. So I do have a -1 that we kind of decided so that we would have...
so that we have an example
of a negative trait.
What a negative trait looks like.
So
we pretended like I made Jill decrease her mental skills.
So I took a -1 on this so that I could get 2 positives and only 1 negative. So my negative trait for mental is that I freeze in an emergency situation. But my 2 positives for my mental features are that I am good at problem solving and that I have a teaching degree, which is nice and vague, that maybe I'll be able to apply here and there to convince the GM to give me a leg up. Yeah. For my social features, I have a +1, so that gives me 2 negatives and 1 positive. And my 2 negatives are that I cry easily and that I have no poker face whatsoever. That I'm very expressive and you can tell what I'm thinking. I'm not a good liar. Like I'm very like here's what's going on. But my positive is that I smile a lot, so maybe that'll get me some like social points. Okay, so what are your features?
All right, so for my physical, I did not have to modify that. I didn't increase it or decrease it, so I just have 1 positive and 1 negative physical feature. So my positive physical feature is that I have strong legs. And this is
getting stronger because we're going to the
by the day. Yeah. Yep. This is the cool thing about features. So like I don't think necessarily that my legs are much stronger than other people on average necessarily. It's just that within myself, my strongest physical feature is my legs. So I get to put that down as my positive feature.
Yeah, and that'll help with running, climbing,
all kinds of stuff.
Kicking.
Kicking. Can do lots of kicking. So for my negative physical feature is I have type 1 diabetes. So I've had type 1 diabetes for a couple of years now. It's never going to go away. Or that's a negative permanent physical feature of mine. And it could have a lot of implications because I'm insulin dependent.
Yes.
So in an apocalypse, when I'm playing as a character, that's something that I would have to worry about for sure. It would have a huge
have to stay
impact.
stocked up.
And this game, a lot of it is about survival, and so it's going to be about, food, shelter, all that
supplies,
stuff. This adds an aspect to that wouldn't be in the game otherwise. For mental, I did get to bump that one up, so I have 2 negatives and 1 positive feature in mental. So my positive mental feature is that I have a PhD in cognitive psychology. So that's why I have a logic of 4, and it can be applied to a whole bunch of different stuff. So I just wrote that down there, and then while we're playing, I can pull it out whenever I need to.
Yep.
But my 2 negatives are that I am poor at mental math, so I have to pull out my calculator like in D&D to try and figure out whether I hit something. Also, a negative mental feature is that I can't resist nerdy stuff. So the things that I'm nerdy about, I find it very hard to apply my willpower to those things. For social, I got to bump that one up as well. So I have 1 positive and 2 negative social features. My positive social feature is that I am caring. I care about other people. And so, it's going to be hard for me to just forget about somebody. And I'm likely to think about something that somebody needs and try to provide that. My 2 negative features, 1 is that I'm nerdy. Now, I'm not saying that being nerdy is negative.
Wow.
I'm saying that it can sometimes impact my social encounters.
That's fair.
In a negative way. Yeah, especially if the person that I'm interfacing with isn't also nerdy. And I'm like, so what are we talking about? All right, so my 1 other negative social feature, I wrote down stone-faced. So we were talking about how funny this is because my negative feature is stone-faced, Jill's negative feature is no poker face. Yeah. It's sort of the opposite, but both negative in certain ways. So stone-faced could be positive if I was trying not to let anybody see what was going on behind there in my mind. However, in my life experience, it's been a bit of a negative thing where my face does not sort of portray the extent of the emotion that I'm feeling. Right. And so it looks like I'm calm, cool, and collected, but I'm actually freaking out inside. Or it looks like I'm not bothered by something, but I am. All right, so that's it for features. So Jill and I have just filled out the next section of the character sheet, which is traumas. Right. So trauma is part of the game as well. It's sort of how you take physical damage or stress and heal it. You turn it into a trauma, and then the trauma is here slowly over time. But when you're creating a character, you can start with up to 3 traumas, 1 of each type. So just like everything else, there's physical traumas, mental traumas, and social traumas. Right. You can have up to 3, 1 in each. If you choose to have a starting trauma, it has to be severity 2, which refers to how long it's going to take for that trauma to heal. So severity 1 heals in 1 day, severity 2 heals in a week, severity 3 heals in a month. So if you're starting with it, it should be the 1 week type. And if you don't have any traumas, you don't have to put any down. Also, if you have a trauma, but you don't feel like playing to it in the game, you don't think it would be fun to discuss, then just leave it out. Because the game is supposed to be fun. So, for example, say you've just broken up with somebody and you're currently still upset about it, that might be considered a severity 2 social trauma. But if you don't want to talk about it in the game or have it impact the game because you don't think that will be fun, just don't put it on there.
Don't leave it. Don't put it in there.
Exactly.
So what are some examples of, say, like a physical, a mental, and a social?
Cool. So I just gave a good example of a social trauma. Physical ones are usually pretty easy for people to think of as well. So I played a game once where my friend was recovering from a really serious sprained ankle. And so he wrote down sprained ankle on his character sheet, and that obviously has an impact on the game if you're trying to do anything physical.
Run away.
And maybe I'll go ahead and talk about the one trauma that I wrote down because it's an example of a mental trauma.
Perfect.
So the mental trauma that I wrote down was work stress. And so even though currently I'm on vacation and I'm sort of healing up from that stress, we're currently working on a very stressful project at work that has tight deadlines, and so I'm saying that that's had some impact on my mental state.
Right.
And so I wrote that down. Work stress. It's a severity 2 trauma. The book also has a lot of other examples of different types of physical, mental, and social traumas. It has examples for features as well.
Yes.
So it's a really great resource to go read through if you're having trouble thinking of something. And Jill's not currently experiencing any trauma.
No, I feel pretty good.
Yeah, she didn't write anything down, so that's great. That's great. Yeah. All right, so the last thing that we need to do is fill out our equipment. It is an important part of the game.
Yeah.
So when you're writing down equipment, you should be writing down things that you do actually physically currently have with you, because the game is intended to begin right away.
Right. So like for me, if we were playing right now, I'm in my apartment, so I have all of my stuff.
Something I like to get everybody to write down is how much battery is on their phone, especially if you don't currently have a charger with you. But who knows, even if you do, who knows how long the power is going to last, right? So how much battery you have on your cell phone, how much cash money you have with you, what sort of food do you have available, things like that. But yeah, you can write down as little or as much as you want on your equipment sheet, but what you write down there is sort of the evidence of what you have with you. So that is basically it. Once you've done all of those things, you have created an end of the world character.
Yeah.
And now you have a pretty good idea of who Jill and I are as well.
Cries a lot. If you've ever played this game yourselves, let us know in the comments below. And if you are interested in playing, let us know what you think.
Yeah. Let us know if you have any questions as well. We can try and answer them.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.